19. Becoming persuasive and pervasive. IDB sets new loan conditions. In a peculiar way, our IDB revolving loan project may not have been as disastrous as we may have thought. The IDB itself appeared to have enhanced its institutional memory through that experience. By 1990, the IDB was entertaining a loan application from the government to rehabilitate 150 kilometers of rural access roads in Trinidad and Tobago. The improved roads were expected to generate economic and social benefits to the farm households by lowering transportation costs, improving farming technologies, and making access easier to and from the farms. However, there was a new condition for this loan. The loan had an attached program of parallel action outlined in the special conditions of the loan contract as follows. Borrower undertakes to carry out through the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Marine Resources, the Agricultural Development Bank, and other related government agencies the necessary parallel activities as agreed with the bank in the annual meetings referred to below in paragraph E of this section 6.08 in order to ensure increased yields and production from the holdings served by the improved roads. These actions shall be directed towards providing technical assistance to farmers, improving farming practices, promoting farmers' cooperatives and similar organizations, facilitating credit to farmers for the purchase of inputs, and improving irrigation and drainage systems where needed. 6.08 paragraph D, Loans Contract Special Conditions. This is the Act program, but by that time, the Act was no longer in existence. Call to assist. In 1992, I received a call from the local IDB office to meet with some visiting personnel from their head office. These were the officers managing the submission by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to the bank for a loan to finance a series of access roads in farming communities. As they explained, the technical details concerning the roads were fine. It was the accompanying economic analysis that was posing a problem. The analysis, as presented by the ministry's economists, showed such high rates of return on the project that the visiting team feared they would not be able to get it through the IDB's directors' meeting. As one of the officers put it, "If these returns are so good, our directors will say, let the farmers borrow the money and fix the road. According to these numbers, they should make their money back in less than 5 years." I was being asked to clean up a situation created by civil servants overtrained in economics and undertrained in common sense. The challenge was to revalidate their analyses in a truthful and transparent way that will not show so rosy a picture. My solution was to build a series of models of the operation of farms adjacent to these roads and to calculate the net increase in marketable value coming from the farms, which we can allocate to upgrading the road. To the IDB, this appeared to be a most painstaking exercise, getting a profile of the farming activities on each road, either from actual visits or from the extension service officers, calculating the value of produce coming out of each road, and then projecting the likely increase that would result from a reduced cost of transporting produce to the market. To me, this was an opportunity to become persuasive through our solution analysis. The choices of roads followed a common criterion. After being recommended by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Marine Resources and the Tobago House of Assembly, each individual project was subjected to a cost-benefit assessment. The qualifying criteria was that each project had to achieve an economic internal rate of return of at least 12%. This rate, 12%, was considered the current cost of money in 1994, that is, the commercial bank interest rate, and was considered also an appropriate indicator of the opportunity cost of using these funds. Farmers were expected to derive real benefits from the program by increasing the amount of land they allocated to production, adopting new farming technologies, and changing the intensity of their cropping patterns. The three primary assumptions concerning the acquisition of such benefits from the program were: A. That the rehabilitation of the road will have an overall impact on the transportation costs involved in farming. This could be a direct reduction in the actual cost of transporting goods and services to and from the farm, as well as a reduction in the percentage of crops left unharvested due to the transportation marketing difficulties. B. That the extended impact of improved accessibility to farms would translate into a greater flow of resources onto the farm, inclusive of fertilizers and manure, which would increase the productivity revealed through yields of the farming unit. C. That the improved access would lead to an expansion in cultivated hectares within the zone of influence of the road. The program also recognized that access roads had the potential to generate social benefits to beneficiaries. Once you improve the access road, the farmers will have more options to increase their income share of the market for agricultural produce. For those who actually lived on the farm, improved roads will translate into social benefits as easier access to education and health facilities. How access roads help farmers. Access roads are important as underpinning the relationship between the farmers and their ability to access more land and more markets. The problem is that the road belongs to the government, so farmers were constantly in a position of pleading with the authorities to maintain their access. This is the tension that usually appears in the press. However, we focused on a secondary asset sitting right in front of us. It was the concept of the zone of influence of the road. Although terrain constraints and physical obstructions, such as steep slope, rivers, and swamplands, do effectively set boundaries on the zone of influence of each road, land structures seldom restrict the cropping pattern in Trinidad. You can observe vegetables being produced in hilly, undulating, and flat lands. Similarly, sugarcane was also produced in flat, hilly, and undulating areas. This was called the ex-ante analysis, the before the scene, and it adopted a conservative approach to this important variable, defining the zone of influence of the road as follows: flat lands, 500 meters on either side of the road. For undulating lands, 350 meters on either side of the road, and for hilly lands, 200 meters on either side of the road. The zone of influence of each road was proportioned into three categories: the total zone of influence, the current zone of influence, and the potential zone of influence. The first represented the total amount of hectares that could be accessed through the road. The second referred to the cultivated areas currently being served by the road at the time of improvement. Extension officers in Trinidad and Tobago confirmed this information. The third category reflected the total area of the zone of influence which could be cultivated given current farming patterns and topographical conditions. This potential area was determined based upon recommendations of the agronomists accompanying the ex-ante analysis. Having covered all of our bases with the available expert advice, myself and Beaumont Celestin, a young graduate of UWI and a strong support in such endeavors, got down to the arduous task of visiting farmers and crunching numbers. We came up with 16 distinct farm models. The models captured the cropping patterns in both the dry and wet season and presented two project scenarios, without the road improvement as well as with the road improvement. The total crop value for the with project scenario incorporated one major adjustment. We assumed that once we got the roads fixed within a 50-year period, the farmers would have fully exploited the total cropping area up to the level of the potential zone of influence. It will expand their activities. The critical value we wanted to get was the total value of crops coming out of each road on a seasonal basis. This was calculated using the following data: the cropping pattern in the farm models, the 1995 wholesale prices for agricultural produce, the yields considered current at that time, and the current area under cultivated in the zone of influence. The costs of transportation to market used in the without project scenario ranged between 15 and 20 cents per kilogram. The costs used in the with project scenario to between 10 and 15 cents per kilogram, depending on the farm model. When you stop to think of it, to be able to say the value of produce coming out of a particular access road was a statement of substance. Sure, it required a massive set of calculations, but in the end, the IDP got their desired results in terms of a more realistic rate of return on the projected roads, and the loan documents proceeded with success. On the other hand, we were generating through this significant exercise a valuable statistic in providing strategic space for small farmers.
Let us look at what this strategic space affords.
All seasonal accessibility becomes possible, thus reducing significantly the wet season transportation costs. The vehicular operation costs for all vehicle types are reduced on the rehabilitated access road.
Higher local
load factors are now possible on the access roads, thus reducing the cost per ton per kilogram
over
the length of the haul. More economical vehicle types are now an option. Handling charges and transfer costs are either reduced or limited. Access roads are pervasive. Sometimes the initiatives that work do more than create models and expenditures for immediate benefits. They also bring out methodologies that are creative in themselves. In other words, they point to new ways of strategizing for wealth creation. In the case of access roads, our empirical approach caused much excitement within the engineering division of the Ministry of Agriculture. These were the guys who laboriously decided on such matters as improving drainage and irrigation for farms, and often wondered what were the benefits from their efforts. Now they were getting such a good picture of their contribution that they insisted that we organize workshops with extension officers and with the Tobago House of Assembly in an effort to popularize the value of the information we were generating. Of course, we received numerous invitations from farmers and other interested parties to do a valuation of their roads. In one instance, farmers in the hills above Paramin were arguing
for an access road
directly to the North Coast Road. The reason being that paved North Coast Road was a safer route down the mountains than the winding road that traversed the community of Paramin. Our problem was that improving that connection would probably benefit the real estate agents who were eager to purchase farmlands in the areas overlooking Shadow Bay for high-priced North Coast villas. Another case involved the Richmond Farm Road in Tobago. On inspection, both the extension officer and myself noticed a set of tire tracks in the road leading in a direction in which we were reliably informed there were no farms. We decided to follow the tracks and came up on the Goldsboro River and a truck mining gravel from the river. That really incensed us, and in discussion with our local guide, we insisted that our validation include a proviso that a barrier should be placed before the end of the road so as not to inadvertently facilitate the mining of the river. In another case, an extension officer from Tobago challenged the validity of our estimates in the sense that some of the roads had been chosen for political purposes. Well, the roads being considered for our exercise were given to us by the IDB. We had no authority to include or exclude any road. What we offered was to teach the extension officer how to generate the value of produce coming out of any given road. We then suggested that if he or any farmers felt that their road was being neglected in favor of another, because some secretary of the THA had property on that road, there was a clear-cut remedy. What they needed to do was to present to the agricultural division the value of produce coming out of their road and ask for equivalent proof that the secretary's road produced a greater value and thus deserved a higher priority. Case is proved. The crowning victory in this exercise was that we were able to go back into these areas 4 years later to access the benefits of the program. The Evaluation Progress Report of the Rural Access Roads Rehabilitation Sub-Program utilized the ex-post benefit cost analysis and a survey of 488 farmers on 24 roads to assess the performance of the sub-program. Our survey confirmed that the expected changes in the cropping patterns in the zone of influence of the roads, as represented by our farm system models, were achieved. The ex-post analysis found that the production values on the roads completed in Phase 1 and Phase 2 increased from 99.276 million ex ante to 104.36 million, an increase of 5.12%. This confirmed to the program expectations of changes in the farming systems on the roads. But identified the 3 farming systems, FS4, FS6, and FS7, that accounted for 97% of the estimated total crop value in Phase 1 and 75% in Phase 2. In Tobago, the net margin on farm holdings ranged from $47,000 a year in the private herbs and vegetable farms to only $9,000 a year in Tobago state lands. The outlier in this range was Windsor Road in Tobago, with an estimated average net margin of only $2,800 a year. Survey indicated that there had been an increase of 6.7% from $8,657 to $30,716 in the average net margin of farms experiencing changes in the intensity of their farming systems. There is a sense of satisfaction when one is able to confirm with such irrefutable results that his efforts have helped to strengthen a program. Our access road justifications showed the value-added side of creating strategic space for small farms through access roads.